can we? Do we got a bump yet, Matthew?
No bump.
Where's our music?
Hi, this is Matthew Morales with the Workers' Gripe podcast. I'm here with Steph Sterner.
Hey, how you guys doing?
And our esteemed Latasha Holloway.
Whoop.
Happy to be here.
And we just want to discuss things and stuff for the next few minutes.
Oh, we're trying to go in a little bit of depth. Latasha, you've done a lot of work in our community already. I mean, you launched our office space for VB Coalition here at Gather, where we're recording right now at Town Center.
Great place to be, too, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, good people out here.
That's right.
They're so grateful.
They are actually really helpful. I didn't mean to sound sarcastic. It's just
You
my
don't sound
natural tone.
sarcastic. We love you. Thank you. Okay, so let's continue a little bit. So, Latasha, with VB Coalition, you have been at the forefront with so many issues, one of them being, and always about the families. I will say this, always about the families and always about the community. I mean, Latasha just won't quit. Come on, could you tell us a little bit more about why you got into, fighting the good fight?
It has been a good fight, but for good reason. I started this fight because of the horrible things that were happening to my children that I learned were happening every day at their school. And then upon me trying to find some resolution, I ran into the resistance from the city that basically expressed it didn't matter what was happening to my kids, that this was the norm of what you do with children with unique needs, poor children, children that are of color. This is how the city was generally mistreating children that had no voice in our city. So when I approached some of the leaders in the city and asked them if they would help, if they could help to change the horrible things that had already happened to my children, just to ensure that it wasn't going to continue on. To my horror, I got resistance once again. And so it became evident to me that if I wanted to see change in my city, I was going to have to be the change that I wanted to see. And that's when I decided I was going to have to, champion this cause and become the champion I wished had shown up for my children. That's where the lawsuit comes in. The first lawsuit that I filed against the city of Virginia Beach was to get rid of the current apartheid scheme that has been imposed on our city for generations. It prohibited people in certain communities from ever having equitable voices, from ever being able to attain the representation of our choice, right? So I started the lawsuit in 2018. I filed. It took 4 years just to get it to trial.
Wow.
And that was a David and Goliath tale, if ever you did hear one. Having the single mother of 4, living in poverty, that has always been outspoken in the community, always been an advocate for the underserved, to speak up and speak out about the horrible things that were happening in our community. And then to see so many leaders ignore and try to shield the city from some of the horrible things that they had done, hiding some of the evidence and things like that, was just really disturbing. It was really, heartbreaking, to say the least, to see that. But my God is a great God. And that's the moral to this story, I think. Our God sits high and he looks low, and he sees what's happening to his children. And I believe that because our God is a faithful God. He's always been there. He's been watching, and he's been moving in our city. And he used me. He used me as a vessel in this instance. And I'm so grateful that we can say today that that horrible system that kept so many silent in the city of Virginia Beach has now been broken down. And as a result of that, this upcoming election will be the first election in the history of the city of Virginia Beach where every citizen will have an equitable vote, an equal vote, which is the way our forefathers intended it.
Latasha, I just want to say I'm grateful for all the work you have done all this time. But could we talk a little bit about the fact that you, being all by yourself initially when you post that lawsuit, could you talk a little bit about the harassment you had experienced as, a mother with children and other individuals that you were attending to in your household, like Mr. Logan? How that was just at sometimes a bit overwhelming.
Absolutely. But it's nothing that we haven't heard before, right? So if you've ever studied history, any time there's been any movement in the civil rights movement, any movement in just causes, there have always been those that would push back against that, right? And ensure that your voice is silenced.
Mm-hmm.
So my story is no different. I've had the misfortune of having, police officers called to my home to harass me. The different arms of city government called to, basically just try to instill fear in not just myself, other members of my family, my neighbors, people that are around me that have tried to assist in the cause. So it's important that those of the community that have experienced these things can see that this is what happens on the other side of that harassment. This is shining light on the horrible things that our city has been known to do to intimidate and retaliate against you. But if you just hold on and continue to lock arms with those who are standing with you through the storm, I can assure you that there is a brighter day. You can come out on the other side. And this is an example of that. So I'm happy to be representative of that.
So, it has been known, or maybe it's just me, but I call you the tiny giant in our community because if you think about it, you have all these forces coming towards you right now, and even in the past, a little bit silent here and there, but we all understand subtlety when it comes to certain hijinks, right, of the city. So, regardless of all of that coming your way, somehow, by the grace of, like what you said, by the grace of God, not much of an income, everything coming your way, and you wanting to take care of everybody. Everyone wants a bite of you, it seems. But here you are, running for mayor here at the city of Virginia Beach. How many times have we ever, in the city of Virginia Beach, Matthew, how many times have we ever had someone who has dealt with the hardships here in our city?
I didn't know there was going to be a pop quiz. I would say probably never.
Yeah. Okay, so with my understanding, I grew up 80s, 90s. I don't recall a candidate running for the city council that, ever came from such a plight or still experiencing that while they're running for office. Latasha Holloway. Tiny giant, everybody here is speaking to us right now. So maybe we should go in a little bit, no matter what you're experiencing today. Let's go a little bit into, we'll rewind into a little bit of the future, maybe the present right now. We'll skip the future for now. So have you noticed, because I know you've been here, so many issues. You came out for some of our addressing of the city council, right? Back in January, February, March. It goes on. you understand that our workers deserve a fair pay wage. I mean, you can't just grow up in the city. And the city says it's great. The city council says this is great. Everything's going right, guys? But what I'm trying to understand is, if it's so great, why are you trying to push out the families of Virginia Beach who grew up from such children, who believe in our city? I mean, I don't know how many times I don't know how many times that I could just sit there and say, why is this going on?
Why are they so afraid of collective bargaining?
Not just that. Why are they so afraid of people saying, hey, I want more in my life. I want more for my families. I want more in our community. What's your response to that?
I would just say that this is reflective of exactly what it means to have bankrupt leadership. Our leadership in the city of Virginia Beach has not worked for the people in eons. And what we see in our community is a breakdown of all the things that they have lacked to do for so long that it's adversely impacted our ability to even remain in the city. So when we hear statistics like 9 out of 10 of the city workers have to, can't afford to live in the city. They have to, commute from other cities to be able to even survive, just to be able to live in, hospitable home and community. That's not so surprising to us because we live it every day, right? When we understand that about 30% of our houses here in the city of Virginia Beach will be underwater if we don't do something about our flooding issue. The mitigation of our flooding should be at the top of the list of the things that we should be addressing in our city. However, the city leadership that we currently have been enduring have been, kicking this can for many, many moons, and nothing truly has been done to cause effective change in our city, right?
Can I interrupt you for just quick? You brought up flooding again, and we know that's been an issue for decades, right? I remember talking to delegates for General Assembly, even city council members, how they were studying for, for years, right? 12 years. They were trying to study Holland's effective use of dikes and other, other systems of draining the waterway. See, I'm no scientist, so I'll admit that here. But anyway, so now they're starting to talk about a solution. You've studied that solution. What do you think of their solution the city council has for our flooding here in Hampton Roads, here in Virginia Beach specifically?
They have no solution. That's been the problem, that every time that you go to council, they're asking the citizens to pay more in taxes. Well, you've not only gotten the citizens' taxes, you've gotten, funds from the federal government to mitigate the flooding. The fact of the matter is nothing has been done to truly put an end to the flooding issue.
Can we say that together, guys? All at 1, 2, 3. Nothing has been done.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I'm not even a fan of indoctrinating cheers.
So the answer to this is we need to do everything that we know to do to protect the interests of the citizens here in the city of Virginia Beach. No one's home should be in jeopardy of being underwater.
True.
And as it stands right now, we have whole communities that endure their neighborhood having a unnatural lake being somewhere in some way, shape, or form in their community, most of every month. This is unacceptable.
Especially during the summertime.
It's absolutely the truth. When I was growing up, we lived in Lansdowne Meadows. Well, they should have continued on the theme of the Lansdowne Lakes. We had what we called Lansdowne Lakes that would appear, for a good several weeks out of every year. In front of our front door, so this is nothing that it has not been occurring for generations. The fact of the matter is the city has simply failed the citizens of the great city of Virginia Beach. And if we know that most of our earnings, the largest purchase that we make in our lifetime are our homes. It is what we build our legacies on. We cannot afford to have our legacies underwater. So instead of paying for yet one more study and allowing the powers that be waste our money giving it to their crony friends. We need to be implementing action verbs to mitigate the flooding issue in the city of Virginia Beach. It can be done, and once I'm mayor of the city of Virginia Beach, it will be done once and for all.
Can we say do something?
Do something about it. That's
Do
it.
something.
That's it.
So I want to go a little bit. I mean, we've got so many issues to tackle in such limited time, but you came with us to the city council meeting on the 15th Tuesday of this month. And one of the issues that they brought up was the $22 million that they want to spend on the Pembroke Mall. To me, I grew up here, down the street from Pembroke Mall. It's a dying franchise. I'm sorry. I love you guys, love the mall, but if we can't tackle some of the issues here, why are we blowing money on another mall? How do you feel about that?
So I'm glad you brought that up, Steph, and it's a sore spot for a lot of people here in the city of Virginia Beach. And it's not because we don't want to continue the growth of the city, right? We want the city to be able to grow, and we want to be able to support different, developments within the city for one major purpose, right? Affordable housing. Can we say the word affordable?
Affordable
housing.
At the end of the day, if this development is not going to be affordable for everyday people to be able to thrive, then is it fair to use public dollars to pay for this garage or whatever they want to dress it up and put the lipstick on that pig and say?
I believe they have a hotel they want to make too.
Well, this is the problem. There is a large unspoken history, dirty secret in the city of Virginia Beach about our homeless problem. And that $22 million could go to solving some of that problem. I mean, we could use that money in so many ways in this city. Another garage it wasn't one of the things that came to mind.
We could use it for flood mitigation like
Absolutely.
we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely.
Oh, I mean, I just want to point out, I mean, it wasn't no more than 2019 or 2018. They were talking about permitting the homeless in their tents.
No.
Living on the beach.
No.
I thought that was so ridiculous. I would think they need the money to survive. So maybe they're gathering money to afford this Pembroke Mall deal through that way.
So let me tell you more about that dirty little secret. Many of us that work in the homeless community can tell you exactly what happens a lot of times in our city. The city has been in many ways very selective about who it wants to help with the homeless shelter, with certain resources of the city. Unfortunately, what oftentimes will happen is that those persons that are homeless are given a one-way ticket to the city of Norfolk. And Norfolk picks up the burden of assisting a lot of our individuals. Now, the side note to that is, and a very unfortunate side note, is that Norfolk has kind of picked up on this dirty secret, and now they have made it almost impossible for individuals that are not residents of the city of Norfolk to now receive assistance in the city of Norfolk. So what our city is doing is disgusting. It is tragic, and it costs lives. And instead of mistreating individuals that their only crime in this instance is they have no home, for whatever the reason.
So would you say they're criminalizing poverty?
Absolutely. And it's very unfortunate. And I've now seen this firsthand. So I would pray that someone would challenge what I'm saying to you right now, because I've seen it. I've literally watched individuals be shuffled to the city of Norfolk's homeless program for whatever the reason. Now they'll come up with all different excuses. This program is closed because of whatever, and we're now diverting persons. But the point is that they're diverted. The point is our tax dollars go to support those that are not able to, thrive in the inhospitable winter conditions, and it's not happening. So I am just like every other taxpayer in our city. I want to know where my money is going. And everyone should be asking that question. Why are people being diverted outside of the city of Virginia Beach? This happens on so many massive levels that it answers a very important question when we start talking about our census. It answers the question of why aren't our numbers where we estimated them to grow to in certain areas.
Oh, yeah, because
and that's why
you don't have our residents. They don't count you as living in the city.
And I just wanted to say, I'm sure Steph and I both remember seeing something down at the oceanfront that's at best tone deaf and realistically
tell us more about it,
much
Matthew.
worse than that.
And this was years ago. This is ongoing in our city. And if you want this to change, here, Matthew, tell us about it.
They had signage saying not for people not to give money to the homeless on the beach.
How did you interpret that?
I don't know. That's too inflammatory. I'm not gonna say that here.
I'll say it. You can edit it later. Okay. Basically, the way I interpret it, me who have had lived on the street a long time ago in my own city. Thanks, guys. Thanks. But anyway, I interpret it as don't feed the animals. I understand their intentions may have been well, but think about it. If it's freezing cold in the winter, you are right there at the oceanfront. You're at town center, right? You're being shuffled from place to place because you're riffraff, according to the city. What are you going to do? You have no money, and then, some people just kind of look at you like you shouldn't be there, even though you grew up in that city. So, going to that, how are you going to get access to resources that our city has been singing about for the past couple of years? How do you get access without dying? How do you get money to go to some warm spot for a little bit of food just so that you can live?
So they instead wanted people to, I believe, put money into little vending style machines.
Yes. It was more like collection boxes.
Yeah, they were collection boxes.
Whatever coins you could spare.
To give money to the city so that the city could, I guess, give help to the homeless.
Can someone tell me how much right now, if you were a homeless person, you wanted a sandwich and a bottle of water, okay? They usually come in, 22 ounce? So how much would that cost you if you couldn't get access to that lockbox, that little donation box you put your coins in? How much would that cost? Over $5, right? Just to live.
That is so disturbing because that's not the way that's supposed to work. So, those of us that have worked in the nonprofit world, those of us that have worked in the homeless environments, just ensuring that persons come out of homelessness and thrive, we know that that's not the way that it works. There are millions of dollars that are given to the city that they are, supposed to be using for the purpose of housing, to produce affordable housing opportunities. The question is, why aren't we seeing that reflected in our city? And if we know that it's not being reflected in our city, then we then can understand why so many persons are teetering on this, they're just not going to be able to overcome this hill that of poverty, right? We know that that's what those funds are for in the first place. And that's why if the funds aren't being allocated and they're being misappropriated and they're being funneled to these little side projects with their, friends of their, crony friends, then we know that that's what theft, that's stealing. That is what misappropriation is. And we have got to do all that we can to ensure that that type of corruption ends in our city.
So do we want to talk about the Housing Resource Center?
We could, and I definitely want to touch bases on that. It's one of the city's jewels. I call it jewels for a reason, okay? I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. When I say jewels, I mean money, a small amount of it is being funneled into one resource, and it's not being equitably spread off to other resources or individuals that need that. So, the way I understand with the Housing Resource Center, I understand what they were doing. They were trying to house some of the homeless, but the building doesn't house as many as needed. If I could, I want to drop a link. I'm going to drop a link later after the podcast where I have this information, but it doesn't.
It'll be on your screen right now.
Okay, so they funneled a bunch of money right into, like, a small amount, but to them it was big, into a housing resource center. It does not house many families. It does not house many individuals. Yes, they had a section of social services there. They also had some nonprofits they have a laundry facility. They have a lot of good things. They have a small little playground. But the way I'm trying to understand it, we have an epidemic on our hands. I'm not just talking about COVID. I'm talking about homelessness and poverty. Some of this stuff could have been corrected from the get-go with rent relief before COVID. I've been begging for that for a while. And housing our homeless. I just can't fathom why it took so long to actually be into understanding why we need to, put a little more time into housing our poor and our homeless. I mean, you go forward into COVID later, it's like, oh, we got a bright idea. Let's give rent relief, right? But this has been an issue for a long time, and once those federal funds dry up, what are they going to do after that? What do we do?
The problem just at the end of the day still hasn't been resolved, right? Because at the end of the day, you still have persons who are living below poverty. At the end of the day, you have individuals that cannot afford the standard, rents or funds that needed to house them, right? And if we understand what the issue is, right, the funds that come into the city are federal funds.
Exactly.
that are meant just for, like you said, to ensure that the unhoused become housed, whatever that means. So the problem is that the leadership that we have in place have not understood what the problem is and incorporated a resolve to put an end to the issue. Placing or building a building that houses a minimal limit of families per night is not sustainable to prevent the housing or the rehousing issue. Utilizing the funds, however, to rehouse is a solution that has been found to be far more productive and successful than trying to just, group and throw multiple families under one roof and then call it a solution. Oftentimes when you do something like that, it does cause more issue than it does resolve anything. So that's why it's so important that these conversations should be being had with the families that are unhoused, right? If the leadership were having these open dialogues with these families and asking them, how can we help? What would be more productive than, what you're receiving right now? I wholeheartedly feel that these families would respond to them, providing or supporting the family with getting rehoused ensures that, one, the child or the families the children of this family are continuing their education in our city of Virginia Beach public schools. We're not having to then additionally pay to have these families bused or taxied is what the city of Virginia Beach has been doing from outside of city lines into our city. That is what causes a burden on the taxpayer's shoulders. Having to pay for a service unnecessarily, because if we could house those families and keep them within our city and ensure that we are rehousing them and rapidly rehousing them so that there isn't this, a year-long wait to be rehoused, that will cut back on some of the expenses that the city is having to endure trying to keep up appearances, if you will. So, because we're not just talking about, paying for a motel, hotel. We're talking about paying for the transportation. We're talking about assisting with whatever foods and remedying the fact that the families probably don't have, food every night. So there's a lot that goes into rehousing families. And we have to be open and understanding of all the things that are incorporated in making a rehousing a family situation successful.
Yes, and our families are very, very important. And we have families all over Virginia Beach, not just our workers. We also have small business owners who tried to access the PPP loans. And I was reading an article earlier talking about how the majority of the funds actually went to developers and bigger corporations, and that maybe somewhere in 30% of the PPP loans actually went to small businesses that were trying to stay alive during this pandemic. So, as we talk about this and trying to expose some of the secrets you were talking about, how do we say to some of our residents here in Virginia Beach, how do we explain to them that they do have a voice and that those funds should have really in some way went to them? Some of the small business owners I talked to didn't even know they existed.
Mm-hmm.
And to mash topics together, how do we help them when their child is learning English as a second language?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. So what we're all talking about truly is representation.
So many issues.
So yes, but it all comes together under the big umbrella of why it's important that we all have representation. If you are a small family, you want to start a small business, and you reach out to your local leaders, and those leaders don't have information as to how you can obtain some of those incentives of being a small business, they are doing you a disservice.
Exactly.
And so that's why it's so important that we have leaders that live in your community. They can relate to the experiences that you have had to endure. They have a vested interest to ensure that your small business is successful in your community. Do you see how that all works?
You would think.
And they have a vested interest to ensure that every child in their community is receiving all the resources that they need to be successful.
Oh,
That is key. Representation is key. So what's been happening in the city of Virginia Beach is we have had to endure living in one part of the city and having a person represent us that lives in a whole different
world.
On the other side.
Can we say world?
And cannot relate to the experiences and things that are going on in your community. So when you approach them and say, these horrible things happened to my child in school last week, they shrug their shoulders, they roll their eyes, and they say and do nothing.
And they might as well be saying, ain't my problem.
That's exactly right. Because guess what? They don't live in your neighborhood. They don't live in your community. They don't think that it's their problem, right? So we have to ensure that every district has equitable representation. And that's why one of the things that I want to say on this podcast tonight, if it's not the most valuable thing that I say tonight, we need for effective leaders in our community to run. That's everyday people who are making change in their community to run for these districts.
You mean everyday people?
That's right.
You mean the ones sitting there at the table saying, "I don't know. I don't qualify for this assistance. Pandemic's over. I don't know how I'm going to keep the lights on tonight. I don't know because apparently I mean, I can equate it to where I was at one point. I mean, a long time ago, and still that way. Thanks to the pandemic, they've been able to get resources federally, but it's not going to be there forever.
Mhm.
And I still remember sitting there and crying. I remember crying because I was pregnant at the time. I could not afford food. My spouse, apparently at making $8 an hour, brought us above the poverty line according to their statistics. So we have a lot to do here in our city. And I just want to remind people not to be scared, because going forward, if we don't say something, nothing will change.
At the end of the day, we need to ensure that we are keeping our workers within the city of Virginia Beach safe. And that's what I have joined efforts. The Virginia Beach Coalition has joined efforts with UE 111, and we are fighting for, the opportunity for bargaining within the city of Virginia Beach. Collective bargaining is needed because we have to ensure the safety, the well-being of all the workers. I have had so many teachers approach me off the record, fearful that if they say anything, they will not only lose their jobs, they'll lose everything. Everything teeters on their ability to maintain employment with the city of Virginia Beach. And so we have worked very hard to shelter and protect those that have that very real fear, right? Because we know that retaliation is real within our city. But I want to empower every worker within the city of Virginia Beach that what really is going on here is a lack of representation. What would it look like if you had a leader within the city of Virginia Beach Council in your district that you knew was for collective bargaining and that was interested in protecting your rights as a citizen? That would feel so different. And that's what we're doing. We're fighting to ensure that everyone within the city of Virginia Beach feels safe, they feel protected, they feel that they can endure anything. They can be the David up against Goliath, just like I was, and not fear being silenced. So it's important that we continue doing the work that we're doing right now in our efforts to obtain collective bargaining here in the city of Virginia Beach.
And this is where we would play the Ghost of Tom Joad, the Rage Against the Machine version, and that would be our outro.
Well,
we can't afford it.
Yeah, well, I just want to say one more thing. The workers are the lifeblood of the city. Let's not forget about that. If we pay the workers like a bit more, give them some paid sick leave, or even, a little bit of vacation time, I think our city would be vibrant and productive. I think we can do this. Why not we just kind of give a little shout out to the workers? I know you're afraid. Come to our corner. Come talk about your stories, your lives, how every little issue that we talked about today, the kitchen table issues, affect your life, impact your life, and how you grew up in the city like I have and many of us have, and you want to stay.
And if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, reach out to us via email. I'm going to put it up on the screen on YouTube here. workers.of.hr@gmail.com. And that's it for today. Thank you, Latasha, for being our guest. And thank you, Steph, for being an awesome co-host.
I try, but one day.
Bye, everybody.